open up the case number 8, State versus Ezekiel Steeze and Marlon Steeze. Now, Marlon Steeze has currently signed a plea deal with the court, and plea deal with the DA, and has presented it to the court. We're currently waiting on Mr. Ezekiel Steeze's signature for his plea deal. Is that my understanding?
Let me check 1 second, Your Honor.
Okay.
It does look to be signed, Your Honor.
Okay, perfect. All right. So both plea deals are in. The judgment will carry out the proceedings with the signature of those documents. They will now become enforceable through the court and punishable by law. In the terms of those, there is a probation in which we're going to proceed with the hearing on the probation. So I guess, Mr. Grant, do you have a list of probation candidates or officers available for the
Yes, Your
defense?
Honor. I actually have the deputy that volunteered to be the first probation officer is actually on your right. He's your bailiff right now. It would be Sergeant Santos with the LSST.
Excellent. Mr. Santos, again, thank you for stepping in as a bailiff. Sorry we were running a little late there, trying to get this all buttoned up before the hearing. But okay, so are there any objections from the defense for Mr. Santos being the probation officer?
I would like to make a request to see if Lawson would actually be interested, or Lawrence, sorry, would be interested in being my probation officer, since he was the original arresting officer.
Right. I thought the idea was to not make Lawrence, or to keep Lawrence from being it. So your request is for Lawrence to be your probation officer.
The option to ruin my life for the next 2 weeks, if you'd like.
I mean, this is a hearing. We'll go back to Mr. Cranton. The request is for Mr. Lawrence. Do you have any objection to that?
Due to some other circumstances not involved in this case, Your Honor, the state would like to not push that forward as this time. I've already discussed with Sergeant Santos the requirements for probation, and he's tracking what's needed for both. So I'd prefer if we can keep it with them.
That's fine. Mr. Santos is volunteered to do it and understands the job. So, and if Mr. Lawrence, there's a conflict with Mr. Lawrence in some way, then I understand that as well. So at this point, the court is going to find that Mr. Santos is a perfectly, wonderfully capable parole officer for both Mr. Ezekiel Steeze and Mr. Marlon Steeze.
That's acceptable.
All right. Again, that should cover everything. The terms of the plea deal will go into effect immediately. And court is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Before we adjourn, Your Honor, what exactly are the terms of the probation? Just so we.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's get through this.
I can go over that if you'd like, Your Honor.
If you want to present it, since you're more familiar with it, but I can also read it from where it is on the record.
Understood. If you want to read it, Your Honor.
Give me just a minute. Let's make sure we got the actual agreement. All right. Article 1 would be the accepting the culpability of the alleged charges of above. I believe you're familiar with both of your charges, or would you like me to read those out? Currently, Mr. Ezekiel Steeze is charged with 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and 5 counts of kidnapping. Does that, do you agree with that, Mr. Ezekiel Steeze? Okay. Okay. Are you sure? Because on your record here, it says that you've got kidnapping of a government employee ×3 as well. So imagine they sent you and fined you for that, correct?
Ezekiel, could you speak up, please?
Yeah, Your Honor. Part of the plea deal was we dropped the 3 charges
Okay,
against Mr. Ezekiel.
That's fine. You can drop them. Did you give him any restitution for the fines that you
No, Your Honor.
fined him for? Okay. Well, I mean, if we're gonna drop charges, we gotta make it right. So that's 3 counts of kidnapping
Kidnapping of a government employee.
of a government employee. Okay. Well, I'll give you. While I'm going through the rest of this, we'll figure out how much that is. We'll work on the restitution, or if you can, please figure that out for me.
I can get
And
it for
then
you, Your Honor.
that would be great. Okay, but that covers that one. I don't think the charges for Marlon changed at all, though. Is that correct?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Steeze, you're charged with 5 times kidnapping, and 3 times kidnapping of a government employee, along with 5 times of assault with a deadly weapon.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. So, yes. Do you want me to adjust the charges on the record on the MDT here, Mr. Cranton?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm not able
Okay,
to.
that's fine. Let me get this taken care of here. Got it.
That would be $15,000 that Mr. Ezekiel is owed back from the restitution. If you're dropping
All
the
right.
charges.
All right, make a note of that. And we're also shifting these pleas to guilty. All right. So we've agreed officially on the record to accept the culpability of the charges. And they're aware of the rights to both an attorney and criminal proceedings, like to enter a plea of guilt for the alleged crimes. I don't see in this plea agreement if there's
plea
any
agreement
mention of
was just to,
probation.
the plea agreement was just to cover the pleading for guilt, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm gonna change it up to where it shows the different concessions that are made, but the plan was just to state the concessions here in court on the record.
Oh, I understand that, but I mean that's the whole agreement. They're signed this, that they're pleading guilty to the charges, and they've already been fined. So I mean, there's no mention of probation or parole on this.
I can fix it in there if you would
I
like.
mean, they've signed this.
The issue is we've signed is what I'm understanding from the judge.
Yeah.
So we've
So
signed a
that's-
plea agreement without probation, Your Honor.
It looks like it.
So the
I
discussion
mean,
had, Your
unless
Honor, was
can
it
you
was
show
going to
me?
be
Can you show me
yeah,
in this in agreement, Mr. Cranton, where it says there's probation?
Your Honor, the concession was that we were going to discuss it here in court.
Well,
That way we can get it set up.
You want to set up probation, but you didn't have them agree to probation.
So there are electronic records showing that the agreement was for probation.
But there's not the signed agreement.
I believe if you don't mind, Your Honor, me addressing Mr. Cranton directly.
Please don't.
Never mind.
Thank you. So I mean, here's what we've got. I've got this contract that is signed, but there's no mention of probation. So how am I supposed to proceed with the probation that's not agreed to?
It was agreed to, Your Honor. It's just we were stating that
okay.
we weren't putting it on that
So-
piece of paper. We were going to talk about it in the courtroom since this is a new system that we set up.
Well,
So we can make sure everything was set up properly.
but I mean, so is he just agreeing to probation as an experiment? Is that my understanding, or is it terms
No, Your
of
Honor,
his
they had already
plea?
agreed to the probation period, but it just wasn't written on the plea because that was just stating, "Hey, we're pleading guilty."
Do you
and we were gonna
see
talk about it in
where
court.
I'm at a
Yes, Your Honor,
little
I
bit
do.
of a okay? All right. So the option is, at this point, is to get him to sign another agreement with those conditions. But I mean, is that something that you're just wanting to work out in court? Because
That
again,
was the
that's
original plan, Yana.
all right. So we're going to say that the original plea deal that is signed is null, and that we're going to renegotiate a new plea deal with probation. Is that my understanding of what you want to take place here, Mr. Grant?
If that's what you want, Yana, we can do it that way.
I mean, that's basically what we've got, because they've just signed a plea deal, and we just put it into the record. So we're trying to change it. Mr. Mouse, Mr. Steeze, do you have any objections to that? The question
It's a
is
little interesting
exactly.
making a plea deal without probation stated on.
I mean, do you want to renegotiate with the, because I believe you guys did agree to that, from my understanding, from what Mr. Grant said, that was part of the agreement. He misunderstood that he had to put it into the actual agreement of the plea deal.
So yeah, we had spoken outside of the courtroom on
Right.
that. I do see the issue whether it's not on the plea agreement for the courts itself, because okay.
So we can nullify this agreement that you just signed, and we can provide one, or Mr. Cranton said he would provide one to sign that has the probation in it. Again, do you have objections to that? Or is that cool?
Would you allow a 5-minute recess for me to?
Sure, deliberate. Think about it. The court will recess, or the hearing will recess. We'll give you 5 minutes. Just kind of talk it over. Any objections?
No objections at this time, Your Honor.
No objections at all. So my understanding is that he wants to put in the new record, or the record that is previously mentioned above.
We as the defense are willing to null and void that first plea deal since it was mistyped.
Sure.
We don't believe we have the time to come back at a later date to redeal with that.
Are you good for me to get the new one set up, Yana? I can do it here on the tablet.
Yeah, get that one, or yeah, add it to this, whatnot, and then we can ratify the changes in it. You can just add it to the ones that are already on the record, since it's we haven't locked it down yet. Add those in, and then we'll just have like a little initial spot for that. So we'll amend the changes to this. So let me get to it real quick. The deal includes that the state is not pursuing charges in reference to case number 2, as charges were dropped by the state and not dismissed by the courts. The state would still have the to bring those charges back in front of the court. What did I miss? Oh, it's just talk about, that he can come back to the court. The plea bargain is stating that we will not do so. All right. All right. I'm on Steeze. Under my own will and understanding, will be entering the plea of guilty to the charges referenced in the state of San Andreas, case number 8, State versus Steeze and Steeze. In return for entering this plea of guilty, the state will no longer be seeking the charges of number 2. State, I also understand that I will be placed on a 2-week probation period. And this will entail routine check-ins with my probation officer. To be assigned by the state. Previously, we had established that Mr. Santos will be your parole officer. However, we did not define the routine, the definition of routine, as Mr. Powell has pointed out. Continuing on, random drug tests at the discretion of the probation officer. And I will not be allowed to travel outside of the state during this time. I am being arrested if I am to be arrested during that 2-week period, I will understand that the state has the right to avoid this plea and render the charges against me for case number 2 versus Steeze, state versus Steeze. Okay. Yeah, so we need to define what is the regular check-in first. Make sure we lock that down in the contract before we sign it.
So that entails my probation. What about my cohort easies?
Are these the same probations?
So the probation would be the same, Yana. I'm adding in his information for the plea deal now. Basically,
right.
for Mr. Easy, we removed the 3 times kidnapping of a
We
government
did.
official. If he were to be found to be committing crimes within the 2-week period, then those 3 charges would be added on. He would be refined for it as he is receiving restitution for that, but he wouldn't be sent to jail again as he's already served time for it.
Right. Any
And then,
objections from
Your
Mr.
Honor, have we
Mouse
found
or
a decent allotment of monetary gain for the time?
my understanding?
incarceration?
Mr. Powell calculated out as 15,000.
Is that just for the charges
That's for
themselves,
the
or
3
time in
charges.
prison?
That's not the
Because
one.
if those charges are to be dropped, I would say he has that.
How many months was it,
available.
Mr. Powell?
So I would argue, Your Honor, that
60 months per
usually
charge.
we only give restitution for time spent when it's an unlawful imprisonment, which this in case was not. It's just as part of the plea deal, we went ahead and dropped those specific charges.
I'd like to argue that if the charges are being dropped, that if he was incarcerated for him, it would be unlawful.
That is not how that works,
Yeah.
Mr. East.
I mean, unfortunately, right now we'll deal with the unquantified, but I mean, I'm gonna put that one on the PD because if y'all are gonna come in here and drop charges, DOJ can't afford to keep paying for PD's mistakes. So you guys deliver the restitution of 15,000 for sure, and I'm gonna go on and we're not gonna do any time spent or time served stuff for it. Again, you on that side, Cranton. We'll revisit it at another time. I mean, right now we'll move on because we got all this other stuff going on. But I don't know if it holds water, but maybe we'll debate it later on. All right. So, what does routine check-in mean?
I'd say no more than at least once a day, Yana.
Once a day. I mean, that is
No
if
than.
Would
in
that
the
be
city
within 24 hours, Your Honor, or like?
I imagine it's 24 hours, right?
Well, I was just gonna do the 24-hour clock, so actual date change.
Right. But I mean, also if they can't get in to the city,
not saying that they have to get checked every day. It's just
but
no
every
more
day
than
they're
once
in
a
the
day.
city, they have to check in.
No, they don't have to, Yana. It's just if the probation officer wants to check in on them every day, they would be allowed to, but no more than once a day.
Oh, so they don't
that
even
way
have
they're
to report. The probation officer is going to go and check on them.
Yeah, it's the probation officer job to check in on them, but it's also it'll be the Mr. Steeze's job, both of the Steezes, to be able to be available for them to be able to check on them. So if they're in state, they need to be able to say, "Hey, I'm in state," and just letting you know.
Okay. We got that written down in the agreement. We got defining it as. I mean, we know
that would just be terms of normal probation, Your Honor. I can put that.
Well,
in
terms of
agreement
normal
if you want,
probation
but
would cover Mr. Santos's stuff, but I mean, as far as what he needs, what he's required to do, he needs to be determined in the probation. If he needs to come in every 24 hours, it needs to say that.
Oh no, Your Honor, no, yeah, he won't need to come in every 24 hours.
Does he need
That
to
would
come
be-
in at all?
No, Your Honor, it's just when he does come in, he just needs to check in with somebody at the police department.
Okay. Well, then whatever the plea deal that we're rewriting, whatever you want these gentlemen to do for it, it needs to state it in there. Not necessarily what Mr. Santos is capable of, because I mean we can reference that later. But if it needs if you're going to say, hey, they violated their probation, I'm going to say, how did they violate their probation? And you're going to have to point to either the contract or something that Mr. Santos finds.
One second, Your Honor. I'll
Sure.
write something up real quick and see if we can agree on that.
That's fine. Like I said, I mean, if you want to just edit the document itself, take the signatures off, they can just re-sign it if it fits their liking.
Okay, so I will be required to check in with my probation officer or another law enforcement officer if my probation officer is unavailable each day that I am within the city. So whenever you guys come into the city, you would need to then, check in and say, hey, I am, here, if you guys need me. That way it doesn't get too excessive of you guys constantly flying in every single day. And, I don't want to force you guys to come into the city if you can't. You know what I mean? Does that sound good for everybody?
Does
Donna?
oh, let's check and see. Have you sent the wording to both Mr. Acker and Mr. Steeze?
I was going to ask, is there
I'm
any chance I
updating
could have
it.
that?
I'm
Yeah, let's-
updating it inside of the plea agreement.
Or the
as
record?
I go.
You okay? As in the plea deal? Okay, so Mr. Acker, Mr. Steeze, you can check out those documents, and again, if you let us know when you're done, Mr. Cranton, and then they can review it and let us know if they have any objections. And you said you were done.
Almost done, Yana. They
Okay,
can follow
all right,
along in
so-
there if they would like.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. Just let us know when you're done so they can view it.
Your Honor, would it be acceptable to have a 5-minute recess while he's typing this up?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Appreciate it. I just
if you
want
need to
a
do
chance to smoke
anything.
a cigarette if I can.
Oh yeah. It's fine. Take a little bit of a break, and we'll get back to it here in just a minute.
Appreciate you, Your Honor.
Client's document. Make sure there's nothing that jumps out at you.
I can
And
go
then
ahead and read through them if you would like, Yana.
As,
I mean, at this.
as my co-defendant doesn't have access to the plea deal himself, can we have that read off?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. I'll read Mr. Steve Ezekiel's specifically. We had first got to the first part of it previously, but the defendants already served their time in prison along with paying their fines. The defendant will agree to 2 weeks probation to be carried out immediately upon conclusion of the court proceedings. I will be required to check in with my probation officer or another law enforcement officer if my probation officer is unavailable. Each day that I am within the city. So basically every time you fly in or within a day's period, you would check in with a probation officer. As part of the agreement, I am to, if I am to commit a crime within my probation period, I am aware that the 3 charges of kidnapping of a government official can be added back to my record, along with being fined for the charges. So that is the addendum to the plea agreement at this time.
And then, Your Honor, would there be any restrictions on weapons during our probation or anything like that?
Does not state it, but as far as I understand, there's supposed to be a protocol written for probation.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
again,
part of being on
that's-
probation, you're not allowed to carry any weapons or
Okay.
Yeah,
smoke or
Um,
drink.
smoke or drink.
My apologies, Your
Yes,
Honor.
Your
I
Honor.
just realized what I was doing.
That's a part of probation. Hey, I'm not.
I-
Hey, that's a part of. Not
So-
supposed to be drinking. Not supposed to be doing drugs. Not
Well,
supposed to be
bes-
carrying weapons.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that as it just wasn't clarified previous.
Yeah, it's not in the agreement, so I mean, you're right to understand that. But I think it should be at some point. I know Mr. Cran's working on a template at the moment, but yeah, anything that you are actually to adhere to should be in the agreement.
I believe our questions will help him for any next.
I think so as well. I think this is great. So again, did you want to amend the contract to involve the carrying of firearms and drug use, and because again, this is the contract that states his probation. So if we're gonna say he violated the
If I need to,
probation,
Your Honor, I can, but that's where my understanding was, we're saying, hey, you've got probation, you're required to check in, and upon being put into the probation system, then the officers go over what's required for the probationary, like, hey, you're on probation, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. So that way we're not taking up time in the courtroom for those things.
Your
Okay.
Honor, I want to make it known that we are completely understanding of that, but I want it to be on the file.
I
just for
think
future
I
reference
don't
if
I
anybody
don't
were
see
to
why it
ever
can't
come
be
back
in
to this
writing,
case.
to be honest, because at the same time, I mean, and if we need to take time and and fill it out so that it does cover everything, I mean, I don't see why that's too big of a deal.
Understood, Your Honor. I will get it.
I mean, right
typed
now
up.
we're kind of in a limbo because we need to, get these boys, their plea deal. So, I mean, if we're
Not to
gonna,
make the prosecution jump through hoops, my apologies, Your Honor, but I would like it to
No, it's
reflect
fair questions.
everything necessary.
no, I exactly. I mean, we need to cover, if you're gonna require these boys to do something, it's got to be written down. And I understand this is the first time we're doing it, so there's some growing pains, and so court's going to give you some time. But again, if we adjourn this hearing, if we don't have a plea deal written, these boys are just going to walk out of here. Because I mean, technically, or we'll have to have a trial. Ultimately, we'll have to try.
I know we've already had 2, Your Honor. Do you mind if I get a 5 to 10 minute recess to get this all typed up, and I'll go through and make sure.
Take your time. This is the time we got to do it.
Mind if I borrow the clerk as well?
Sure. Yeah. If you
Recording
why
started.
don't you read it out to us this time?
Right. As a part, so this is for both of the individuals. As part of my permission, I understand that I will not be allowed to carry any weapons. I will not be allowed to consume any illicit drugs. I will not be allowed to leave the state without getting prior approval from my probation officer, and I will not be. I will be available to my probation officer when requested to conduct a drug test or a search of my person to ensure that I am staying within my probation requirements.
All right. Go on and read that yourselves, gentlemen. Then we can if there are no objections, we'll go on and get this one signed, ratified, and that should cover the probation. We've also got Mr. Santos here signed and everything. He's ready to go.
Everything that I read there is clear and concise.
Yeah, so some of the things that we didn't add in when we discussed, we're not going to add in that you're not allowed to talk with known criminals, because if that were the case, you wouldn't be able to talk to anybody in the state. And then on top of that, we aren't going. You're allowed to drink alcohol. You're allowed to smoke weed. It's just anything that's illegal you're not allowed to do.
Oh wait, sorry. Oh hell, okay.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
No, yeah, they're legal, so we're not going to take that away from you. For the weapons, obviously, you're both, pleading guilty to felonies, so you wouldn't be able to carry them to begin with. But within that, you're also not supposed to carry any knives or anything like that as well.
Understood.
Okay, I think we have everything covered, Yana. I'm sorry for
Excellent.
the wait.
No problem. No problem. I'm glad we got it all worked out. I'm glad we got a template built with everybody's work today. We did a good thing. So I'm proud of everybody here.
A lot of good work for the future.
I do want to send out my appreciations to the defense for handing with this time. I'm sure if I was the attorney on that case, I'd have been like, "Oh, they signed it. Sorry, bye." So I appreciate you guys working with me on this.
Absolutely.
So noted. All right. Well, the court is adjourned. The hearing is adjourned. Again, the signatures ratified on the documents, and we will close the proceedings, and the agreement will be enforced immediately. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Mhm.